Hello, everyone, and thank you to the first seasons of the TandemBuilder podcast. Today, our guest is going to be Dawn Rochelle, and Dawn calls herself a student of human behavior and leadership, as she thinks that creating experiences for people that they may not be able to create on their own is what her intent is. Over her 35-year career, she has been cutting edge in human services entrepreneur, a civic leader, and a community organizer. And Dawn says she's most proud of her relationship and being a successful and continuing growing wife and daughter and wife to daughter Taylor and son-in-law Chris. Dawn and I know each other from working together in the early 2000s. And we may talk a little bit about that and what is now one place. But I really thank you so much for being here, Dawn, and giving us the opportunity to talk about work teams and throughout your career and the many roles that you have had, how leadership with team really works for you, and kind of your kind of tidbits and best practices to share with us. So thanks for being here and doing this with us.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. No, I'm so excited for you. So I'm so proud of you for leaning in and looking to how you can continue to serve others, because that's kind of how our journey started. So
It
makes sense that we're doing this together today.
Gosh, does it seem like it's been 21 years ago, 23 years ago?
No, not at all.
Isn't
Not
that
at all.
crazy?
Yeah, it is true that the older we get, the more time speeds up, it seems.
Yeah. So I mean, we talked about your bio a little bit, but kind of share with us where your interest began in doing human service works, because human services isn't for everybody.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that I always wanted to serve animals. And it was really, I think about that, and I had this pivotal moment. We all have these pivotal life moments, and one of mine was sitting in 5th grade and getting those weekly readers that we would get in class. And there was a weekly reader story on veterinarians, and I had wanted, because I loved and still do animals. I'll rescue one, all the time. And it was about the fact that we had to put them to sleep.
Oh,
And that had a profound impact. And from that moment forward, I thought I was going to be an attorney. I have not one idea where I got that idea, but I think it might have been in the same weekly reader, as they would share different professions. So I was actually going to be an attorney. And going through college, I went to community college, and the classes that I was most drawn to were not economics or math. And it was really through my professors and speech communication, psychology, sociology. I actually didn't know what social work was. I'll be honest.
Mhm.
Although when I learned of the profession, I understood that my grandparents had actually taught me what social work is by their time and attention to me. And I knew that as a little girl, that if I hadn't had the adults that poured into me, whether it was my family, whether it was my teachers, whether it was a kind community person, I was born to young parents who did the absolute best that they could. But we had a lot of needs that were lacking in rural southeastern North Carolina, which, and there's a lot of those needs that still exist. And as I grew up and I knew that this was going to be our home, I knew that there was, well, I thought I knew the needs that existed. I'm still challenged by them today, which is why I'm still in the profession doing what I'm doing, trying to help be that secret decoder ring for families, especially our young military families that move, because I'm a local and I still struggle to find services or connect or to keep
Right.
abreast of things. It's just a challenge.
Yeah. And so you worked for Department of Social Services for a bit, and then you came to what was then the Onslow County Partnership for Children, now known as One Place, as the ED. And you've been there since what, 99, 2000? Is that right?
99. Yeah.
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 And through your tenure there, Onslow County has definitely changed. Um, did you even have Western Extension at that time?
Not when I started my career.
Yeah.
We did not. I
Yeah.
always say, you're local when you can say, you proudly say that you knew Western Boulevard when it was 2 lanes and there was not a mall there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But so through your tenure there at One Place, tell us kind of how you went through the evolution of services to come to One Place. Because originally it started with Smart Start funding and early child birth to 5 services to where you are now, because that is a phenomenal growth over the last 24, 25 years.
Yeah. And, and it kind of matches the community. I think anytime that you look at sort of evolution of services, and I mean, just evolution of humans,
Yeah.
is you always have to go back to what are the people in front of you saying to you. It's kind of a basic tenet of social work. It's a basic tenet of human service delivery, is you let the needs of the person in front of you, the community in front of you, tell you what's needed. Smart Start, as you know, is a complete gift to our community. And at that time, when Smart Start came to be in our community, we were the 5th year of funding. Smart Start this year is 30 years old.
Wow.
In North Carolina. And, I was driving back and forth to Greenville, to East Carolina, to get my master's. And I was working in public child welfare, and, you had, that was before you had the cell phones. I had a bag phone and I had a pager. So I had a lot of time in silence in the car as a mom of a 3-year-old. And I'm just like, I just need to be upstream. Like, I completely need to be upstream. Like, how can I help other kids not get to the doors of DSS? Because just intervening is just not my, it's not my calling. I want to prevent. And coming to the partnership in this new funding stream, people thought I was crazy because it was a startup nonprofit and it had this one funding stream. It was a lot of money, but it was, it's like, what are you doing? Right? Why are you leaving secure government work? And it's like, because my blood pressure is high and I need to be a part of solving things for the community. And really, that's kind of been the guide from the very beginning. I just talked to somebody this week and I said, no, my goal is still the same. It's still to help families that come into our community to have services so that they can raise their children, that children can thrive. And it's still the same. And my hope still is that one day our organization isn't needed because families have what they need organically. And that hasn't changed. I think a very pivotal moment was, and how our mission was expanded to 18. Again, it was community need and community driven, was sitting as part of our community child protection team, which in North Carolina is a requirement of all 100 counties. And I was also teaching at the time. I was adjunct faculty for the School of Social Work at East Carolina. And one of my students, we were doing a program management sort of design, and I wanted them to do a real life problem in their community that they could apply. And one of the students who I still keep in contact with came to me and she said, there's this movement across North Carolina to expand child advocacy centers, and the data says that your county needs it. And I said, okay. And the the class ended, and I said, would you present to Community Child Protection Team? Because this is really the group that needs to hear this. And she said, yes. And North Carolina had just hired their first director, and we called and said, would you come and present to us about what this Child Advocacy Center model is? And she said, absolutely. And from there, we sort of started this process of seeing what was needed in the community. And I facilitated it, facilitated a lot of things in the community. I like to convene and sort of collaborate to help people make decisions about programs. And we never intended to be a child advocacy center. We were just facilitating the process, but it has to be a neutral entity that holds the program.
Right.
And that's how we ended up expanding our mission. And that was very pivotal because we were 0 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did that mean? But we knew that if we were doing the prevention piece, 0 to 5, and helping that brain architecture, that one, that's a prevention strategy to end child abuse, because families have what they need. And then on the intervention side, if it's happened, it doesn't have to change the course of that child's life forever.
Yeah.
It's an interruption and it has to be dealt with. And I want the services in this community that I want for my child. So if this happened to my daughter, what do we need?
Right.
And so that's kind of been the guide ever since. And we've gotten really good at saying no to things.
Yeah.
And we've gotten really clear on our 3 things, which is to end child abuse, to connect families and children to resource, and then how is this sustainable past all of us?
Wow. So in the programs those 3 things that you're working on, what programs does One Place have now to do those things?
Sure. It's still, we're always a work in progress. And
as you build it.
Yeah. And it is, it's not, the beauty of Smart Start is that it was entrepreneurial in its thinking, right? We were the first in the United States as a state to invest this way. And that speaks to my natural personality to be entrepreneurial. And we've just continued to figure it out along the way, whether it's been bringing in services to the community, like additional after school funding. And then I was a chartering member of our YMCA and then we passed that on to the YMCA. So it's not about, John Maxwell always says, be a river, not a reservoir. And so
I like that.
Mm-hmm. So how can I be a river in this process, knowing that, the only way to be sustainable is that it is a team,
right?
And it has to be a team approach in anything that you do. We all have a shelf life, and even programs have a shelf life. So the basic programs that we offer are ones that we were founded with, which is, programs that serve and develop quality early childhood environments that are accessible to families with the goal of being affordable for families. And childcare is a huge need across this country. The pandemic, I think, weakened the scaffolding even more. So we have a lot of work to do. One of the ways that we help scaffold in our community, our early care and education, is by bringing in programs. So we are the North Carolina preschool administrator for our community. Again, didn't intend to do that. The administrator had been our school system and got the call one day, and it's like, well, it's important for these over 700 children that we serve, that we do this. And we continue to have a really good partnership with our school system. And because, again, you can't do it alone. You never want a program that you provide to be a cliff to a family. So where are they going after you, right? You always have to think about that. And we did the same thing with our early Head Start and becoming an early Head Start grantee so that we could bring that service into families. But we did a strong pivot a couple of years ago where the need is childcare. And so how could we partner with our early care and education partners and provide even more resources within their classrooms to support families that are economically disadvantaged or have special needs in their families.
Mhm.
And then, of course, on the prevention arm of things, it looks a little bit different than it has in a while, because we are actually pushing out training to our community partners, which is an extension of our Child Advocacy Center. You know, you have those day of services where you provide those medical exams and those forensic interviews, but that's just the day of service. So we support that child and family and those multidisciplinary partners from law enforcement, mental health providers. You know, we support all of those to include social service workers. So having that training arm and being able to elevate that, because we don't have an AHEC here. You know, we don't have an area health education. We don't have trauma-informed training that naturally comes to us. And we've been doing that arm for a long time with early care providers, but we need to be able to do that in a more robust way for our community and professionals. Yeah.
Yeah. So as all of this expansion has occurred and you've been there, talk to us about leading your staff, working with funders, your community and your stakeholders, leading them through this navigation of change and in this growing process. How was that? And
Yeah.
kind of what practices did you use for that?
Yeah, I had you know, there was talk about pivotal moments. And we went through a really hard legislative session in human services in North Carolina in 11-12. And we were reduced again. I say again, it was the second time in my career that we had been reduced by $1 million in funding. And a lot of my colleagues across the state were leaving. And I was my Rotary Club president. I was in my second term as United Way board chair. And I was tired and exhausted. And I knew still how important these services were. Mm-hmm. And that really started my sort of journey about what influence could I give if I was tired. Mm-hmm. And so that really began my wellness journey, to lead differently. And I've never looked back in that. In my 40s, you know, and I think honestly, as a woman leader, we're taught to just give and to go hard at every opportunity that there is. And we have our families in a different way that falls to women. Mm-hmm. And I have a great husband, great supportive spouse. I'm still the one who would keep up with the schedules, you know?
Right.
And I think most women identify with that. And then, so I knew at that point, like the only way to keep up with it was I had to be the leader that I would want to have. And at that point, I didn't feel like I was fully doing that. So I took a sabbatical, actually. And I always say that to people because it's like, if I hadn't taken that sabbatical, I was blessed to be one of the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation sabbatical recipients. Z. Smith Reynolds is a great organization that invests in nonprofit leaders. And I tell them, if I hadn't have done that, I would not be in the same role. Because I realized how much noise was in my head, having that time away. And I've never let the noise get back. As leaders, when you're entrusted with an organization where your name is on the front of the paycheck, you know, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit business, mm-hmm. you have to have space to think. And I didn't know that in the way that I do now and have lived that. And so that allowed us to kind of step into conversations, to be open to different things. And I had this, you know, sort of, and I'm sure we'll talk about Rotary, but Rotary for me really sort of gave me this opportunity to, again, have this think space. And Rotary, when you talk about community stakeholders and you look at how things are solved, you really have to have 4 pieces to it. And if you can't get these 4 pieces to the quadrant together, you're spinning your wheels until you do. You must have at every table, you have to have government, you have to have business, you have to have philanthropy, and you have to have that advocacy education piece. And that changed the way that I led everything and still does. And I learned that sitting in the World Health Organization in Delhi.
Wow.
As I listened to a presentation about polio eradication. And when you think about something, an endemic, that, I mean, it affected thousands of children a week, thousands, where now we have less than 10 cases in the world this year. And to do that in harsh terrain and just the depths of poverty that as Americans, most of us will never know or see. And that really helped me to step back and to look to see, okay, who did I need at the table, which meant I had to get stronger because I know how to advocate and educate. Like I knew one quadrant. I had some experience in government because I had worked in public child welfare, but I didn't really kind of understand sort of this business mindset. And I definitely didn't understand philanthropy. And I would say most people don't. They know fundraising, like the bake sales that I would do to help my child's cheerleading team, right? But really understanding what philanthropic efforts are to help connect someone to the good in the world through the money that they're able to provide. It's a very different piece. And so I say all of that as the framework, how we had to get really good at saying, I don't know, can you help me? How do we need to do that? Because what I do for a living and helping, make sure that if a child is abused, that they can receive state-of-the-art services in our community, right? So we've had to do things like we have the only 2 pediatric nurse practitioners that can see pediatric sexual assault victims. I didn't know, so it's like, you have to get really comfortable at uncertainty and you have to get really uncomfortable saying, can you help me? And not being afraid too, I would say, to go out of the community, to do that. And that's what led us to partnering with the State Employees Credit Union. That's what enabled us to, we actually now have 2 structures. I actually am the CEO of 2 nonprofits. One operates as the program arm and one operates as the advancement arm. And we just had to get really good at saying, I don't know who can help us. Because sometimes you don't have time to learn it all. You just need to have the right people beside you.
Yeah. What a profound place to come to.
Yeah.
Because I think that as leaders, sometimes we get into this place of trying to solve it all, trying to understand it all. And that 4 quadrant community effort allows each person that may be the subject matter expert in those 4 things for you all to collaboratively come together. And when I think about TandemBuilder, and my thing is bringing people together and making sure your gears don't get stuck.
Right.
It is that tandem movement forward, and that tandem of moving together to get you to the place of, and specifically in your work, to the service of the community. And I think that's just a beautiful thing that that Onslow County has been able to do. Gosh, to be a fly on that wall, I would love it.
Yeah, well, it helps to have courage. And, sometimes it's like, okay, if not me, who, if not now, when?
Right.
And sometimes it's not the right time. And no matter, even if you can see, if you don't have the right stakeholders at the table with the right influence, then you're just beating your head against a wall. And I've done that.
I think, yeah, yeah.
I've done that. And because it's the right thing to do, is not all of it. You also have to have the right team and the right partners, because it has to be sustainable past you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also always go back to my beliefs as a social worker and the basic tenets of the profession. And I would say it is super helpful, because I not only have the ethical guidance of Rotary, right, and the 4-way test, I also have the ethical guidance of social work. That doesn't mean I got it all figured out, but I do have frameworks in terms of how I interact with people. And, the things that I'm known for, I want them to align with what I'm for. And yeah. And so I always just try to do whatever I can. And if I can't, I try to connect other people to it.
So you've talked about Rotary a little bit. So, talk to us about what it's like to be a Rotarian, and how you've used Rotary to influence, or as an influence in serving others.
Yeah, I was asked to Rotary. I was a Civitan, actually. So it's really about civic engagement. I was a Civitan before I was a Rotarian. And what I found with Rotary, because I said no like several times. Like I was so grateful, but I was like, that's a weekly meeting. And I was like, isn't that only men? And that's okay, but they meet at the country club, and I wasn't raised where I thought people went to the country club. I was like, but I remember walking into my first meeting, and there was someone talking about scholarships. There was someone talking about delivering a fire truck to somewhere in South America and how excited they were about it. And I looked around the room, and this was my home community, and I hardly knew anybody.
Wow.
And there was like 110 people at the time in our club. And I was like, I'm like, okay. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I just passed my 19th year in Rotary. And what I say is Rotary has given me people I never knew I needed. Never knew I needed. And it really has become this extended family when I didn't naturally have that. And as a leader, not raised in a business family, it gave me the opportunity to sit at the table with people who have founded businesses, lost businesses, started businesses, had really given so much to our community. I immediately had all of these ready-made mentors in a room that I could sit at the table. So I would come every week with my questions. And that's how I've gotten to know some of the people that are the most important people, not only to my work, but in my life,
right?
That I can call on. I will also say is that it gives me courage. It gives me courage. And people are like, you can speak anywhere. And it's like, to authentically feel like you belong in a room is different. And I will say that because other people found value in my voice, and being a Rotary Club president or having any role, and it's amazing the courage that it gives. And especially as a woman, I was blessed to be able to serve in different district positions. Rotary clubs are made up into Rotary districts to Rotary zones, and then there's Rotary International. And if you look at the 7 areas of focus, maternal and child health is a part of it. Disease prevention and treatment is a part of it. There are action groups to end human trafficking. And there's action groups and fellowships around literacy, all the things that I care about. And so for me, what it did was it opened up this access to people that I would never have, that were then ready to also be a part of helping me and
Mhm.
I can help them too. So I think anytime that you have opportunity, and whether it's, Rotary or Kiwanis or Civitans, anybody kind of has Lions, anybody kind of has their different, a lot of people belong to Masonic lodges,
Mhm.
but civic engagement is a protective factor. And I believe that that is what allows people to feel like they have unity in community.
Mhm.
And that's one of the basic principles of good mental health care, is to know who can I call when I
Mhm.
don't know who to call.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I need, but I know I need something.
Right.
And every week I can go not only to my club, I can go to any club in the world. Now I say it's better than a Costco card.
I love that.
Yeah, and I learn,
Yeah.
right now I serve as I serve in a couple of roles, and one that has been the most like enlightening, I think, in terms of what is the a couple of years ago, the Rotary International president formed an initiative to empower girls. And at that time, the Rotary president was from the country of India. And having been there, I was like, that's a bold move. That's a bold move. And when I was asked to serve in that and to help connect others to what Rotary does
Mhm.
in women's development, and to help people to connect, the greatest thing that I never knew, and I say what privilege I have, even though I consider myself a kid that was raised in poverty, I never had to worry about access to menstrual hygiene products. Like,
Yeah.
I never remember
Right.
that.
Right.
And period poverty and the impact that it has on attendance with our girls in the United States. When you talk to your teacher friends, talk to your girlfriends, talk to students, and
Mhm.
they'll say, oh yeah. And I'm like, and so just because I was asked and I said yes, I have learned so much more about female needs in my own backyard than what I've ever known. And I would say at work, I was sharing this because we now have a lot of people in civic engagement. Because again, gets you out of your box, right?
Yeah.
When you're part
Right.
of it, you got to get out of your box. You'll never solve anything in human services if you don't get out of your box.
That's right.
You can't be talking to yourself. But I had no idea until I was at a staff meeting and I was talking about, because we're forming a global club. It's a cause-based, you might be interested. It's the Rotary Club of Empowering Our Girls. It's all virtual. There
Uh-huh.
are meetups and stuff at places. But the empowering girls piece with menstrual hygiene products, it was so interesting to me to connect with our local students in our Interact Club and walk into rooms and say, is this a need? And they're like, yeah. And for them to talk about their friends that would miss school because they didn't have the products with them, or that they would bleed through and they didn't have access. Well, just because, and I always say, just because I said yes,
Mhm.
right? It opened my eyes to look different and to focus different. Well, I had no idea that there were groups dropping off feminine hygiene products within my own agency for the Child Advocacy Center.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, can we talk? Like, what? And I was like, how blessed are we? But that's happening. And they're like, well, yeah, we make sure that the girls, when they leave, have, I was like, well, we need to be talking about that.
Yeah.
Right. Because I knew that, just from training and just working with sexual abuse victims, that a lot of times abuse starts or ends tied to the menstrual cycle of the female. Right. And we know in other countries, they talk about it readily, that many times girls will use their bodies and sadly be a part of trafficking situations because they don't have access to basic care needs, or they stop school
Right.
because they bleed.
Yeah.
So Rotary continues to open up. It's always an honor to serve. And when they say you find yourself in service to others,
Mhm.
It does. I'm never bored.
Yeah, true. Yes, completely get that. And so, you know, during my time at the partnership, we used a lot of different practices, and read a lot of different things. I still have Art of Possibility,
Mm-hmm.
and I read it a lot. One of my, and I'll get the quote messed up, but you'll get the idea. One of my favorites is in chapter 10, the board, and talking about you are a part of what happens in your life. You
Mm-hmm.
are that part. Um, and, there's always the giving the A. And we used to do that a lot, but opening yourself up to being able to see how others process. And of course, there's touch points. And I was introduced to Tuckman's
Mm-hmm.
theory through the partnership, which every time I talk to a new employee that comes to work with me, we talk about Tuckman
Mm-hmm.
and what things are going to be, what things may look like. They don't have to, but this is what it could look like, and how do we navigate through it? Um, but you now are a John Maxwell certified leader.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm, and I also use John Gottman a lot in the Four Horsemen, because I think that is a practice that can transcend. It just doesn't have to be about marriage or intimate relationships. It's also that model can be used in the workforce. And so I come from a lot of those that I've been exposed to, those processes, but I know very little about John Maxwell. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us more about John Maxwell, and what that leadership is like, and what the processes are like.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So, yeah, John Maxwell is, he's considered the foremost leadership expert in the world. And I think what, I was just, with the team in Florida back in March, and I think what inspires me about the group of people drawn to the Maxwell leadership team is that they're entrepreneurial in thought,
Mhm.
and their heart is good. And the thing that John teaches us, and would encourage anyone listening that has never heard of John Maxwell, I had heard of him, but
Mhm.
hadn't really, with the 21 Irrefutable Laws, which is one of his oldest books, but it really never dove in until I was on my wellness journey, and part of Team Beachbody. And I was watching my coach, and I was like, and she was listening to John Maxwell. And I was like, I don't know what she's doing, but I want some of that.
Mhm.
That's really what led me. And then we have a local car dealer here who, one of the consultants that they use actually did some training in our community. And so I was like, I don't know what he's doing, but I want some of that. And a lot of it is the energy and the framework. I think our brains always learn in frameworks. And John's, the number one law, and the first law in the 21 Irrefutable Laws is the law of the lid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the law of the lid is you're in your own way. If
Uh,
you
yeah.
constantly level up, well, when you think about touch points, right? And you think about that growth happens in pauses, burst, and another pause,
Yeah.
right? Well, we have to always know that we have a lid. Wherever we are right now is our lid. We can always lift
Mhm.
our lid further. And the very first training I went to with the team and was certified was in 2015. And so many sort of things came together from all the training that I had done. And there was this whole room of thousands of people that were there wanting to learn. And there was a reminder that the world is good. There are good people in the world, no matter all of the distractors, if you turn on the news and all the things. But the Maxwell Leadership Team, what I love about it is that I can get on a call with some of the key people within the organization. They're always leveling up and offering more.
Mhm.
And if it also helped me, I will say, to stop doing some things.
Mhm.
And in some ways, it meant that I also had to step aside from some things that I was involved with, that things that have just naturally run their course. It's okay to just move forward.
Mhm.
And I would say it's the same with people. It's
Exactly.
really okay. You know, you can't be a people collector. You can't be an organizational collector. You can't be a civic engagement collector. I mean, you just have to move forward. So I will say that what the Maxwell team did, because I remain in active clinical practice now. I just do telehealth. But at the time I was in face-to-face. And what I learned really quickly is that it not only gave me different frameworks to give to people that just resonated with them, like the law of the lid, right? It's like we are just like you referred to with the art of possibility, like, no, we're responsible for this.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's really a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No. And John just has this very self-deprecating way to go, so what are you going to do about that?
Right.
Yeah. And so from contracts to what moves the needle forward to having this again, you know, I think there's probably about 30,000 coaches worldwide now. Again, it's networks of people like, hey, does anyone have a framework for this? Whether it's with the nonprofit work, whether it's with Rotary work, whether it's with other community work, whether it's with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, what it also taught me was that, you know, if you're growing as a person, you know, and hopefully we all are, right? We're all growing. There's tension that's inherently created in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, in that growth part. And that's where the stories happen,
Yeah.
right? That's where the stories happen. So it was really important to me when I would come home and I'd be full of ideas and I'd be full of all the things, right? Just like when I would come back to work and I'd be full of ideas and stuff. Well, if I'm not giving opportunity to everyone around me, then there's just tension and frustration. It's like, here she comes with ideas again, right? Both in my home and at work.
Right.
And so what I also had to learn is that you have to be scaffolding
Mm-hmm.
everyone around you and inviting them to the table at all times. Henry is a certified leader. Taylor is a certified leader. So they've both gone and been certified as team members. A lot of people that I know in Rotary also have.
Mm-hmm.
I've invited them to the table. A lot of people within the organization have. So it's a good investment, and they're always sort of introducing us to new content and new ways to think and to challenge us. And anytime I'm having a day where I just don't feel like my energy is there, all I do is hit a podcast, just like
Yeah.
this.
Right. Right.
I hit a podcast and I'm like, got it, move forward.
Yeah. Which is, I think, is something that in the minutia of work, and our gears may be going, but we're not getting traction.
Right.
And so then we start spinning out. And I think that, you know, you can compare that to storming in Tuckman or any, you know, other types of models, but being able to then get that traction to, you know, moving together to move forward.
That's right.
Is always something that we are looking forward to and looking for in when we're leading people around us. So, Henry and Taylor are Maxwell trainers, and but they're also your husband and daughter.
Mhm.
And part of your bio, you were talking about the thing that you're most proud of is, being successful and continuing to grow as a wife of 33 years to Henry and a mom to Taylor, and to Chris, your son-in-law. So from, all teams come in different forms, professional and personal. Um, can you share with us your insight, as a spouse and as a mom, how you've embraced being successful in these roles?
Sure. Yeah. I think I'll, I always share, trial and error, right? Goes back to the Brazelton stuff, right? Trial and
Yeah.
error. And, we all have these ideal thoughts about what we think marriage is going to be like, what we think parenting is going to be like. And at one time I honored myself in being a type A personality, and both taught me very quickly not to. But one, I think it's never being afraid to ask for help. I would say that one of the things that got Henry and I through our first 15 years of marriage was therapy.
Yeah.
Both of us came from families that gave us what they were able to, but certainly did not prepare us for everything.
Mhm.
And being able to reach out for help. I love telling the people that I work with, yeah, and we got fired by our first therapist.
Sorry.
She didn't know what to do with us. I was like, I've been on the other seat.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not thinking this for, but luckily both of us knew to just keep looking. And the 5 love languages, when you think about systems and kind of moving together, we just all have to keep working to find the framework and the person that can help us to facilitate it. Everybody's not for everybody. But I think one, getting super clear about our values. Henry and I, although we're very different, we're very different on the Myers-Briggs, on the DISC,
Yeah.
any personality test you want to throw at us. But our values are the same. And
Right.
if you have that alignment of values with the person you're with and next, and also with the company you work for,
Mhm.
with the clients that you serve, it's like, what are your common values? Because if you have common values, you can work through most things. If your
Right.
values aren't aligned, you're not aligned, period.
Mhm.
And I think, I was always, as I was always that working mom where my kid came first, and and she came to work with me. And it's interesting to see that on the back end in terms of how well prepared she was for the workforce.
Right.
And even her company owner has said to me, like, I said, because she went to Rotary meetings, she talked to Rotarians, she talked to Rotary clubs. And part of it was, I was just trying to make it between dance class and I had this meeting, and,
Yeah.
and she would be a part of it and sitting on the desk upstairs. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I think, always including, and as a parent, our job is, if we're grateful to, and I'm always mindful because I know of your loss, is, our job, if we get to, is to raise them past us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's our job.
Yeah.
And for them to go out to live on their own. And what I find is, a lot of parents don't know how to do that, right?
Right.
They don't know how to, like, keep taking that step back,
Mhm.
and keep taking that step back and come in as scaffolding and support. And
That's
if
right.
mom's here, if you need me, if you don't,
Yeah.
because again, I learn a lot of my lessons through trial and failure, and I can't fix everything. So I think that, finding those places and spaces where you can feel that alignment. For my husband and I, we're very busy. Like, if you give us a free Saturday, we'll go in different directions without intention.
Mhm.
And so we know that the boat brings us together. We're very fortunate to be able to have the ability to be on the water, and that brings us together with intention, and we feel together, right? If you don't feel each other, if you don't feel and tap into those emotions, you kind of get lost in your head with words and busy and task and all the things. But at the end, and John Maxwell says this, right? At the end of your life, it's the people closest to you and what they think you mattered.
Yeah.
All else is all else.
Yeah.
Right. It's all else. If the people that are closest to you, that you have that mom and dad and wife and all those titles of family, and it doesn't matter what your accolades and your plaques say.
Absolutely.
Does not matter.
Yeah.
So the Maxwell team kind of helps us in that. And so I've always just said, in my faith, and just knowing that uncertainty is an opportunity. And so faith plays a lot in that as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I liked the point that you're talking about in being intentional in relationships. And the longevity or just the simple connection does not nurture and continue the growth of a relationship. It's the intentional behavior that we have to nurture, and the intentional behavior we have to be of support and caring, regardless if that's a personal or professional relationship. It's the intent and following through with that intent.
Yeah, it was a sermon that I heard years ago, and it was, if you have optional thinking, you have options.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
And optional thinking can lead to optional living.
Yes.
And as I tell my clients that I work with, and even to myself, like, if you can't be in an airplane, right? You can't be on an airplane going in the same direction if you got the door cracked. You're gonna get sucked out.
You're gonna get sucked out.
Yeah. And so and I also think, a lot of people, that's why I always say, if you think you're the only one, just go to the bookstore. There's a whole section.
Oh, that's great.
You can write a book. You
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I will say the 5 love languages and the seasons of marriage, those are my go-to recommendations. And I tell people, obviously there's a faith base to those books, but I say, if you're not a person that subscribes to Christianity or whatever your power is, just take that out. I still don't know of a better framework for it. And there's always going to be seasons to every relationship, which is just another way to refer to, Tuckman's model, which I learned about in graduate school, which is why it's like, okay, what's my frame that I can apply to this that helps people see people are not just waking up to be jerks. Like, right. They just don't know how to navigate the relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I find it interesting, especially when I started working as a family readiness officer, and my audience turned to young adults and young families with and without children. I really began to feel my Gen X, and my bounce back, my, oh, well, if my keys are in the car, I just figure out, and locked in the car and I can't get to them. I just kind of figured that out. And so I started noticing all the generational changes. The positive things I noticed was, if I ever had a problem with my phone or could not figure it out, there was a 19-year-old passing my doorway and I could say, hey, can you help me real quick? Can you explain this to me? Or if there was some type of new app that they were using, what is this for? Tell me about it. So in that context, and as Gen X kind of starts being in senior positions, typically in the workforce, and we have Zoomers and millennials are already in our workforce, but we're going to get to the Zoomers or Gen Zs here shortly.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on what the digital footprint and the social media and the distance that is felt through digital communication? Is leadership going to change when it comes to these new generations, or are the things that are proven successful, whether it's with Maxwell or Tuckman or any other framework? What do you think about how these generations that have not lived without digital influences, how are we going to interact differently with them, or are we?
Yeah, well, I think we already do, right? And obviously it's impacted. I mean, look at you, you're in Iowa and I'm in North Carolina doing this, right?
Right.
And I think, and obviously and I provide telehealth. I would have never thought, that I would have been comfortable with that, but yet I can serve people in trauma-informed practice and help them in ways that is accessible when it wouldn't have been. And I think, this whole thing of artificial intelligence is going to change us further. I think basic human connection is basic human connection. And I think that values are values. I think the way that we get people to pause, like if you, I love the story Ferdinand the Bull. And if you look at the original Ferdinand the Bull, it was produced in like 1933. And it almost feels like it's in slow motion, right? Because it was like the drawing, the animators were drawing and it was like the pages that were flipping, in a book. Right. And now it's like, we have a nanosecond. And I do think that, now there's sort of, so the iPhone, right, was created 2008-9, changed our world. On a lot of different spectrums. And I think that we're always going to need the basic way to connect. Do I think that can be done electronically and digitally? Yes. What I see sort of in the influencer realm, the TikTok realm, all the things is, again, what are you for? And then what are you known for?
Right.
And I still think that you have to go back to, if you're a jerk to the people closest to you, it doesn't matter what you post. It doesn't matter to who you try to connect to. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And it has changed human services work in the way, obviously we're in a hurricane zone, and then also in the pandemic, we were able to continue services, but there are just some services that you can't do in a digital medium, to include the forensic stuff that we do as a child advocacy center. And I think that you can do a lot of leadership development. You can do a lot of learning. You still have to get together every once in a while. You have to figure out a way to be in the same space, because I believe that humans at our fundamental level are experiential learners.
Agreed.
So while you can have the content, right, and we can do this, the serendipity and the learning happens when you get up and go to the bathroom and run into somebody in the hall.
Yes.
And I think that's the challenge for companies that are more virtual and hybrid based. Great cost savings, all the things. I do think you still have to have your teams together, because otherwise things don't pop. You don't feel like you have the energy of the room, no matter how you prepare yourself to show up and no matter how great the speaker is. And the only way that you truly are able, I feel, to get through performing. So if you go back to the Tuckman model, those passive aggressive, things that happen, or when people kind of have the stories in their head, or they make assumptions based on what they see on a screen or through a text or a WhatsApp message, you can't work all of that out unless there is trust. And how you really fundamentally as humans build trust is you have to be in that person's presence. Now, can you do it one-on-one? Yes, I do it all the time in therapy, with people, right? But it's it's a little bit of a different dynamic. And I will say that it's challenging, it's challenging to teams. Our organization, when we went to, because we had to keep people out of the building, the doors closed, we kept working because we needed to see kids that were hurt. And we went to, just the way we work, that idea that, you're going to grow up and have a desk and a window and like you've made it. And mom, I've made it, Yeah, that's not happening anymore. Even I like, give me a laptop, give me my bag. I can work anywhere in the world as long as there's Wi-Fi. So the only way that, and I've chartered, Rotary clubs that meet with people all over the world, and like how they stay together is they still have to find some way to align. So a lot of the ways that they do that is through book studies. Is through everybody reads the book, kind of mastermind. Masterminds are amazing to be able to align and to help other people kind of understand. People still want to know who they're talking to. And, just because we grew up next to each other doesn't mean that we experience the same.
That's right.
And so even for our staff, we're reading, and the Rotary Club of Ending Child Abuse that I helped to charter, that membership, they started with book study. So they've read What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah. It's a great transformative book that came out in COVID. And then they've also read Crucial Conversations. What is a crucial conversation and how do you have it? And we're reading as a staff, What Happened to You? Because not everybody comes into the organization knowing it's okay to have the stuff that happened.
Right.
It's not an excuse. So if you need therapy, here's the EAP plan.
Yeah.
And if you need support, if you need whatever, like, let us know that, but it's still yours, for resilience building. So hopefully that answers your question. But it's going to keep challenging us because we're not going back.
No, and I agree. I so believe that yes, I can connect with someone digitally and seeing them and talking to them. But I also think that depending on that personality you have, and what your framework is and how you exude and express, if this digital format works for you. So there's so many variables in it. And I had an introverted child, and then I had a extroverted child, and their behaviors were so different, but their needs were very similar. My daughter, when she was 12, told my dad, Pa, don't you just understand I'm a tactile person? And so I need you to put your arm around me as we walk down the street. And my son is the same way, still that same very tactile kid. And to this day, at almost 30. And so even though their personalities were so different, some of their basic needs were incredibly similar. So when I think about this digital format that we're going to, and there may be capabilities of doing it, I wonder if it meets the real need. And so I ask everybody on the podcast this question because I'm really interested in 40 years from now. Most likely I won't be here, but in 40 years from now, even 15 years from now, how that interpersonal relationship develops digitally. I,
Mhm.
it's just kind of a thing I have in trying to understand.
Well, I don't think, I mean, you can go back to the studies, the tabula rasa, who was it? Was it Piaget, the sort of the
Mhm.
blank slate, when you go back to that psychology work that was done in the 40s and the 50s, what that clearly showed us is that could a human develop without human connection? Sure. Put them in a bubble. Absolutely. They can develop. Will the brain develop optimally without human touch? No, no. So that's not changed,
Correct.
right? So humans were not, and I say to people all the time, I think we use that word independence a little too much. Humans are actually meant to be interdependent and healthy,
Yes.
meaning
Yes.
that, and obviously, you live the military lifestyle, right?
Right.
Military families inherently have, because there are moves, right? They have to know how to find the grocery store. They have to know, how do I find a new hairdresser? How do I connect? How do I get services in my house? Like there's an interdependence there that is
Right.
necessary. And really healthy humans is about how do I maintain all of the relationships that I need in order to grow and thrive and
Mhm.
ultimately get back. But yeah, we're not meant to be isolated.
No, no,
Mm,
not at all.
mm-mm.
So, you talked a lot about a lot of different things, which I love. I absolutely
Shocker.
love. Really, yeah, it's just, so surprising. But finally, Dawn, as it as it applies to both personal and, I mean, and you've already talked about this a little bit, personal and professional life. Um, what is your secret or your framework to just keeping your work teams that are in your life healthy and functional? So I don't know. When I started at the partnership, what were we, like 15?
Absolutely.
And now I'm sure you're probably close 75, 90.
Yeah, well, no, the amount of staff, we're at 60.
Okay.
Yeah, when we open our new building, we are in a capital project. And we'll be somewhere around 80 to 85 people
Mhm.
as we stand up child mental health services and double our training capacity and expansion of our CAC. Um, so so what I would offer, and the reality of it is, no matter how much I don't want to admit it some days, is that it all begins with me.
Mm.
We say with our leaders, I serve a board, obviously. I am the face of the organization, and I would say we're all the face of something, right?
Mhm.
We're all the face of our family. We're the face of whatever it is, whether you hold a title or not, other than, how we're born into families. But it all begins with me. So if I'm not well, what I lead isn't well.
Right.
And so I have to be relentless about my own self-care. And I wasn't for years. So this is not something I innately knew.
Mhm.
Um, but I have to ensure that my day is planned. And I always have to be putting positive things in my mind. I rarely watch the news, I read the news.
Yeah.
And I love, there's a book that's out recently called The Power of One More by Ed Milet.
Mhm.
And he talks about sort of prioritizing your day differently, where, what are my priorities before noon? Then what are my priorities by 5? And then what are my priorities before I go to bed? And I have to do what's in my control that I can't outsource. I can't outsource my sleep. I can't outsource what I eat. I can't outsource my exercise or my hydration. Like I have to do that. Like that's a non-negotiable. So I don't give that time away. I
Mhm.
and it's in my calendar. Um, One of the first trainings I went to with Maxwell, he talked about you can't be 100% of the time, and your family deserves you to be 100%. I was like, oh, ouch.
Ouch. Yeah.
So I learned that. So I look at my meeting schedule. I know my brain energy and when I'm best. And, I very clearly identify with, so what is it that I need? So if I'm going to need to be relational, or if I'm going to need to be speaking, if I'm going to need to be very tactical and very like head down, pencil that, I got to be doing spreadsheets and stuff. And there's a book called The Secret of Perfect Timing by Daniel Pink, which is great for that, to kind of really own your brain energy. Doesn't mean I can't do it, but it's going to take a little bit of a different energy from me to not do it. I was speaking this weekend and I knew that it was going to be a lot of prep time. There's always performance anxiety. And I knew that I wasn't going to be in the social lounge at 10 o'clock when it opened at night. I'm going night because my brain needs that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I do is when I honestly, when I hope that when I leave this earth, one of the things that people will say about me, honestly, is that I created a work environment where other women could work and not feel divided in two, and knew to take care of themselves. Because we are a predominantly female driven workforce. And I would say the same for men. It's like, go home. It's okay. I mean, and but when you're invested in the work, you're always kind of thinking and inventing and those types of things, and also know what it takes in order for you to be at your best, and do that first.
Right.
Do that first.
Yeah. And I so agree. I think that over the course of life, if you're fortunate, you just begin to understand that when you are in leadership roles, you are the face. And if the face, in all reality, isn't on for the day, it does affect those around you. I think that is a typical response, and very natural in organic, if you will, in places and in relationships, regardless of how they're defined. And so, wiping the feet before you go into a door isn't always easy. I purposefully choose to commute so that I have time to wipe my feet, because I am slow to warm up. And I know that about myself. So I have to have the hour and a half for readiness in the morning before I walk out the door. And I have to have the time to decompress as I commute to work. And so I think that those are really valuable times things that we begin to learn about each other. And for me, it's just been age and maturity and who I've chosen to align myself with, whether that alignment has worked or whether it hasn't, because I learn, which is what that is important. So, gosh, it was good to reconnect with you.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, thank you. Because and I would say even, because a lot of people won't say yes to a podcast or yes to being recorded, but I will tell you, I walk away with more energy than when I started. So thank you for allowing me the time to reflect a little bit and to engage in, just this dialogue. And again, just to connect with you again. And again, I started this and I love your graphic design, your logo, because it is about how we all move together and being interdependent as those cogs on your background is. So keep inspiring and keep adding value to others. And if I can help you along your journey, just let me know.
I will, Dawn, and I thank you again for being with us and sharing your thoughts and experiences. And remember, reaching the goal is all about moving together.